sign on I-25, paint chips still standing proud. Ranch hands lean on rustic gates, reading weather in the clouds. Antelope on the edges, coal dust on our jeans. Four rigs blanking on the rim like a string of prairie dreams. Wyoming wind, you shove those semis sideways on the line, make a 20-foot wall of white in a single night. Drag those tumbleweeds till they're stacked up tight on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a branding fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin, but I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Red dirt stuck in busted boots, pickup rattling down 14. Feedlot steam in the dim sunrise, snow geese cutting clean. L tracks in the timber, sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump, the gust cuts through the soul. You push our trash clear to Nebraska, strip a billboard to the nails, slam a screen door off its hinges, shake the grain out of the rails. You whistle through those coal cars, howl across the powder rim. Every fence line, every windburn grin, got carved by you again. Wyoming wind, you shove those semis sideways on the line, make it 20-foot wall of white in a single night. Drag those tumbleweeds till they're stacked up tight on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a branding fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin, but I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Dirt stuck in busted boots, pickup rattling around 14. Feedlot steam in the dim sunrise, snow geese couldn't clean. Elk tracks in the timber, sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump, the gust cuts through the song. Granddad bowed his head in silence, calloused hands. The prayer was short. Thank you for this pot of beans and the neighbors down the road. He traded the last jar and
Beyond the Fence Line, where we step past the headlines and into the truth. This show isn't about left or right, it's about what's real in Wyoming, across the country, and around the world. No spin, no talking points, just facts, context, and honest conversation. If you're tired of being managed instead of informed, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond the fence line. And now, here is your host, Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor in 2026.
Hey. Happy Tuesday, Wyoming. Hope you guys are doing well. What's going on? Legislative session's over. We're starting to see those campaign announcements across the state, right? For legislature, for local offices, for statewide offices, for even the national stage, right? So that's starting to come, that's starting to hit, starting to happen. Today, I'm going to do kind of a legislative review. Now, by no means can I do a comprehensive review of everything that happened in the legislative session in the last 4 weeks, but I'm just going to try to get through the highlights and kind of probably, I guess, focus on some of the things that matter to most of us on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, there's a lot that went through, a lot that happened. We're going to talk about that day-to-day stuff. And probably talk about some stuff that I was watching and things that matter to me. But I want to put some things into context before I get started. And that is this. A couple of things that I would do when it comes to legislation or how I approach governing. I want to ask a couple of questions before we do something, before we spend our time on something. And that is this. Number one, is it the role of government? Asking the question, is this thing, this bill, this piece of legislation, the role of government? Or is this something that should be given back to the people? Is this something that used to be the people's responsibility and government over time has taken it back? And it's time to give that back to the people and let the people do the work instead of government. That's one question I would ask. Another question I would ask is, does this fix anything? What is this? What is this solving? Because what we see so often is just legislate a band-aid, right? So we get a band-aid on top of a band-aid on top of a band-aid. And instead of actually finding a solution for the root cause of an issue, we just pile on more legislation, more appropriations, more layers of bureaucracy, thinking that somehow, or more money, maybe we're spending more money on the problem. And somehow we think if we just keep piling on and piling on and piling on, that that's going to fix the problem. It's not gonna, folks. I think we know that. And that's why we keep getting more of the same, just in a different way. Or at least it feels that way. When we come out of a legislative session, we go, what did we actually do? What did we actually get done? And don't get me wrong, the wonderful people in our legislature that do an incredible work. By the way, they work for peanuts, you guys. They work so hard and trying to do what is good and right and wonderful for Wyoming. And oftentimes they're so caught up in bureaucracy, so burdened down by the system, by the processes we created for legislation. And yet we just keep adding to it. We keep tweaking it and messing with it instead of maybe taking what we have and putting it in the shredder and starting over and refreshing what we have for 2026, for the future. We just add more and more and more and more and more. And here we are. Oftentimes, our representatives don't even know what is on the books because there's so much on the books. And so often, it's just sort of this chasing our tail with our pants on fire in the legislative session. And maybe part of the problem is it's so short that we can't get meaningful solutions done. And that's not, again, I want to preface that with, that's not to say that we didn't get some things done, some things that are good for families, some things that are good for Wyoming. But a lot of it just ends up being more bureaucracy or a band-aid and not a true solution to a problem. And that's a Governor Joseph would look like. Someone who's going to step back, bring the stakeholders to the table, and instead of continuing to mess with the thing, whatever the thing is, what if we fix the thing? Now I know if we fix the thing, we'll lose the talking point, Joseph. We won't be able to run on that issue anymore because we fixed it. I would argue that, you actually fix an issue, it would actually benefit you more than having the political talking point year after year after year. So with that, let's take a look at what happened in the legislative session, what has been signed by the governor, what died during the legislative session. Obviously, what lived would be anything that the governor has signed. Now, let's take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if you'll let me here. And we're going to kind of take a look at what's been signed so far by the governor. And I think there's like a 1 or 2 more days for him to do some more work as well on some of these things. I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to throw myself in the lower corner there so you can at least see me. Actually, let's take a look at what my options are here so you guys can. Oh, there we go. That'll actually work really nice. So obviously, a lot of bills have. I mean, guys, did you realize during this budget session that there was this many bills? These are just the bills that got signed. This isn't counting the hundreds of bills that died during the session. So this is where I go into asking those questions that I started the show out with today. Is it the role of government? Does it fix something? Why are we doing it? Does it increase government? Is it a band-aid? Is it more bureaucracy? We ask ourselves those questions because I think it's a really, really good question to ask on what's going on here. So let's take a look at some of these bills. And again, there is no way that I can cover all of this. So I'm just going to I'm going to hop around on some of these things. And if you guys are curious, you're like, Joseph, wait, I want to hear about that bill. I want to hear what you think about that bill. Shoot me a comment below and I'll respond to your comment. Hey, this is what I think about that bill. But for the sake of time, there's just no way to cover the 4 weeks in a 30-minute show. So with that, here we go. And so let's take a look at some of these bills that got covered here. And so I'm saying and so a lot this morning. Okay, I'm going to stop saying and so, and we're going to keep going. Voter registration revisions. These were just some clarifications on voter ID and what can and cannot be used to vote or register to vote and things like that. And I think those clarifications are good, making sure that there's a good photo ID there when you register to vote. This is probably one of the most important issues, I think, in election security. And while we have very, very minor issues, if any, here in Wyoming, as I've proven in the past in my past shows, Wyoming residents that are U.S. citizens should be the only people voting in Wyoming elections. And we know that, or in national elections. And that's got to happen. And so there are some common sense things. Now, most election bills died. And in a way, I'm kind of glad about that. And I'll explain that. I actually explained that in another show. But the bottom line is there were a lot of election bills that weren't really about election security and safety. It was more about party control and party getting more control and really making the system harder for voters. And I don't want to see that happen. There is a way that we can make elections secure, but also making sure that we don't disenfranchise more voters. I mean, a lot of people don't even, half of the state, 200,000 people don't vote already in this state. So let's go ahead and not do anything that makes it harder for people to vote. I think that's so important. This one I was disappointed in. The lottery accepted the debit card payments for lottery tickets. I did not like this bill. A lot of people were very fond of this bill, both in the Senate and the House. And of course, the governor signed it. I was not fond of this. Giving people more ways to spend their money on gambling, essentially, is what it is, right? It doesn't ultimately have a great benefit to culture. And this really comes down to just being about the money, not about the cultural impact, what this does to society, to families, to addiction. This just is not morally a great thing to be continuing to do. The Bible talks about just honest measures and about being good stewards of what God's given to us. And have I ever bought a lottery ticket? Yeah, absolutely. I have before. Usually when it gets over like $1.5 billion, I'll go buy one, just for fun. Hey, yeah, you never know. Maybe I could win $1 billion, but I don't do it by practice. But what this does is it opens yet another avenue for people to spend their paychecks. Instead of having to at least go get cash and then go ahead and buy the lottery tickets, now they can just run their debit card and they can use their whole paycheck on that. And this is a real problem for families, you guys. This is a real problem. And so I did not like expanding the gambling institutions or lotteries or anything at all. And yes, it becomes only about money. And I think that we've got to be, as leaders, as governors, as legislators, as conservatives, we need to think about the cultural impact of the decisions that we make and the things that we pass through legislature. And so I would not have signed this as governor. It's just not something that's my priority. The money is not important to me. What's more important to me is those people have food on their families, and perhaps don't have the opportunity to feed this addiction that is hurting their families, perhaps hurting their future. And so I was kind of disappointed in that bill, to be completely honest. Okay, let's see. Obviously, we've got some large project funding. It's all kinds of different state projects, things like that. Let's go down this and take a look at what else we've got. That's really going to be something that's more, obviously you and I, right? Like you and I affecting us, because there's not a lot of those things, that necessarily go. A lot of these go for different things or special interests or lobbyists, things like that. They don't really affect our day-to-day lives. And so looking at that, they passed a bill about making sure that, homeschool kids, stuff like that, can be in public school sports, things like that. There are some in here in particular related to kids and minors that I'm really glad these things did go through. Some revisions to state law to make some of these things like stalking of minors, actual felonies. Like you can't do that. You can't groom children for sex trade and things like that and not and get away with it, or really have a slap on the wrist. These are now some serious criminal offenses to do these things or to exploit children in a sexual manner. These are some serious things. And it's surprising to know that in many cases in Wyoming, we didn't have a lot of these things in place. And so really important that those things got done. And again, I ask those questions, we do it to an extent. We do govern and make law and legislation for moral issues. I think we need to be careful about where we balance that. And of course, you guys know I'm a person of faith. I'm a strong Christian. I believe what Christ has put before us is the most important thing. And that our faith should affect our politics, but it's not a threat to you. And you guys can go back and watch that episode where I really address that issue of faith in politics. But we do legislate moral issues. And I think it's important that we look at those and we're careful about, perhaps not going too far in some cases. But I think these cases are obviously critically important to do. And so it's good to see those things happening. Obviously, they got a bunch of stuff done for schools, things like that. Let's take a look. Go back down. Leash dogs for tracking black bears. I actually missed that bill during the session. I don't even know what that was. I know a lot of these bills are, but I actually missed that one. I'll have to take a look. I'm guessing your dog has to be on a leash for tracking a black bear. I actually don't know. I didn't actually see that bill during the session. I paid attention. The human heartbeat guide. Now, this is interesting. I'm wondering why this is the only one that has a link to it. It looks like a letter from the governor. Oh, it's because it's got a letter from the governor. And by the way, he says that I called for a durable solution. The fact that successive efforts to strengthen abortion prohibitions have only weakened Wyoming laws on this matter. You know what? So I am going to agree with the governor on the premise of his letter for the Heartbeat Act. And here's why. I, too, want to see this issue laid to rest. And by creating more legislation, what's likely going to happen is this is going to be delayed yet again because of courts. So instead of bringing this to the voters, and I know that might be a scary thing for conservatives. Well, what if we bring it to the voters and they vote it down? Well, guys, then God's judgment is upon us for this issue if we can't get rid of it. It is. But I agree with the governor's letter on this, and here's why. Abortion now is still legal in Wyoming before the heartbeat. So I believe, and so do most conservatives, that life begins at conception. And the governor believes that, by the way, you guys. He believes that life begins at conception. And we need to do the hard work of defining elective abortion and non-elective abortion and health care in the Wyoming Constitution and in Wyoming in general in order to address this issue completely and wholly. I, too, am concerned this is just going to end up in court, and we're going to continue down this path like we have for the last 4 years, where we're trying to legislate an issue that cannot be fixed by legislation, and we don't want to recognize that. Yes, am I optimistic that somehow this will stick and that at least we're one step closer? Yes, absolutely. I am. And I applaud the people that put this together and that it got to the governor's desk and that we've signed it. But again, I'd like to see this issue laid to rest once and for all in the great state of Wyoming, that elective abortion is the termination and the murder of a life. And I want to see that. But we didn't get that this session. And so I am concerned about that. And I'm willing to express that because I actually do agree with the governor on this issue. So let's go down through this. I didn't get a chance to look at some of these, like the gambling amendments. I'm curious what they're doing there because, again, I see us expanding, especially here in Laramie County, guys. I mean, I feel like we're putting in a new gambling establishment everywhere. And again, that's not something I'm in favor of. I do not think that commercial gambling is a great solution for Wyoming. And yes, it's all about the money. Again, all about the money. And I don't like that. We've got to be more than about the money and about how those things culturally impact the great state of Wyoming. And I don't like commercial gambling. And it's funny because somehow we can get more and more and more commercial gambling. Meanwhile, you can't play your poker game at home, or you have to have a permit to have a bingo game, and things like this. It's just absurd. Taking away your personal freedoms while expanding the commercial gambling establishment because they have powerful lobbyists and they have money. It's not conservative. It's not the right thing to do. Yet we do it anyways. Yeah, we got through the House, got through the Senate, and we should look at the voting records on those things because I would really like to see folks that voted against anything that would continue these things. So looks like we're doing some stuff to the Wyoming stable token. I do think, by the way, I think there are more bills. I think the governor has till tomorrow to finish signing bills. I know that the House and the Senate have a session scheduled for 10 a.m. in the event that they need to override any of the governor's vetoes. And so we'll see what happens there if they end up having to do any of that. Let's see. They've done a whole bunch more stuff for kids here on this. A lot of these don't affect us personally. I actually did not read this bill either, the school district cell phone and smartphone policies. I think I encourage everybody to take a look at that one. I'm actually curious what they did there. I admit before all of you, there's no way. I work full time. We homeschool our kids, helping my buddy start a business, running the farm, all that good stuff. I don't have time to read every single one of these. I try to look at the ones that I think are important to a lot of us and talk about those things. But a lot of these are important too, no doubt. The Raven Act was another bill to protect kids as well. And so that's what's been signed. Transparency and hospital service pricing, that one passed. I think that's going to be a good thing for people in Wyoming. Don't you guys just love it when you go to the doctors and then like a year later you get a bill for $48.95 and you're like, what is this even for? And it happens to all of us so this, I think this will really, really be good if we can get that full transparent pricing in hospitals. And I think they're also working on that in the federal level as well, getting something like that done. So that's what's been governor. There's a few here. Let's see. The governor allowed for the public school financing to go through without his signature. It looks like he left a letter there explaining why he allow that to go without a signature. For me, when it comes to the education stuff, we're not fixing it. We're not fixing the problem. We're going to continue to just throw more money at the issue without fixing and solving the critical issues that we have in our education system. Bureaucratic institutions get to a point where they are so broken you can no longer fix them. You need to press the big reset button. You need to gut them and you need to start over. That's just what needs to happen. And so I haven't actually looked at the governor's letter to see. Let's take a quick look and see what he said here. Appreciate the work that's been done here and stuff like that. Things about local flexibility and authority. I fear that disadvantages smaller districts. So he was concerned about some of the languages. I know some of the footnotes and some of the things in this bill, wanting them to have a flexibility at the local level and things like that. I know there was a lot of work. The House was going through amendment after amendment after amendment to try to work on some of this stuff. And I know that it failed the House, didn't go through, but the bill did nonetheless. It still did get passed. And so there was a little bit of a battle going on in this stuff. I just don't think that they quite got where they wanted to come on this bill. And so that's why you're going to see him let that go into law. And then I did some line item vetoes, you guys, on the general government appropriations. And you guys could take a look at that. I won't bore you with that. Just some things that he wanted different, right? And that's why we have three branches of government. And some of those things maybe great, some of those not so great, keeping more authority with the governor's office, things like that. But the legislature is trying to, they want more authority and more power over things. And so there's a struggle there, right, that goes between the three branches of government. But that's part of the beautiful design of what we have, when it comes to government. So now I'm going to go ahead and let's hop over and let's take a look at, and by the way, there are more bills that are, I believe there are more that are still coming in for signing. The governor, like I said, has till tomorrow, I think, to get those signed, and then that'll be done. We've got about 4 or 5. Let's see, we've actually got about 10 minutes left for the show, so I'll go ahead and take a look at the legislative session. So, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to really cover check gate here in this show, but this is probably, I might touch on bills from time to time in the coming weeks, just to dive in a little bit deeper. But this is probably going to be the last detailed review I do of the legislative session, because now what? The game is afoot. The running is upon us. The campaigning is upon us, right? So with that, I guess I'll touch on Checkgate, right? That happened, and I don't even know if I like to call it that, because you equate it to Watergate or some of these other scandals, and it was not a scandal at all. The truth and the facts don't support that this was some nefarious scandal. And of course, the Legislative Investigative Committee found that out, right? We knew that was going to happen. In the first 30 minutes of the committee meeting, I knew, well, they have the answers to their three questions, and nothing was done nefariously or wrong. Was it terrible from an optics standpoint, and should it have probably been addressed? The absolute answer to that is yes. The appearance of impropriety on the House floor is an important issue to discuss. But when you looked at the facts and you knew what happened and who it came from, you knew that, obviously, there was no ill intent there. No nefarious, well, I'm going to pay you to pass this bill. The timing might have been very bad, and I don't disagree with that. And the optics, of course, horrible. There is no reason why that needed to happen on the House floor. There were many opportunities to pass those checks off, in private, in a way that, in the hallway. I mean, and you wouldn't have a problem, or in an office or something like that. That's okay. I mean, it is our right to provide money to those who are campaigning, those running for office, to support them if we like what they believe in. And so Rebecca did not do anything wrong. Yes, the optics were bad. But really, you guys, we don't need to continue that issue. And that's where I stood on the issue from the beginning. I'm like, this is a nothing burger. This is a typical distraction that shouldn't have happened. And I agree with that. And I think that it should have been addressed. I mean, I think no matter who did it on the floor and who a check was handed to, someone probably would have brought it up. Now, I would argue that I would be optimistic that many others would have followed the correct process, bringing the concern to leadership, and we would have never needed to have that discussion that wasted so much time. And by the way, a lot of good bills potentially may have died. And I say that in air quotes because I think less legislation and less bureaucracy is better, regardless of what it is, even though maybe some good conservative bills may have died as a result of that. So let's look at the legislative session real quick. There was one bill. By the way, there were a bunch of bills I was glad they died. But there was one bill, and maybe I'll talk about a few of those in the last 5 minutes here of the show today. There was one bill that I was really wanting, as a parent, I was wanting to see happen. And that was the explicit materials in libraries that we have here right at the top. Oh, by the way, you know what, you guys, I will post this link. You know what? This is at the legislative website. By the way, you guys, if you guys want to go to that, just go to the session. You guys can see that at the bottom of the website. Go to session information, and you guys can see this. And I just searched this because I knew it would prompt it to come up. Committee of the Whole, by the way, is what that stands for, not actual cows in the legislature. Anyway, as a parent, I want to be able to let my kids loose in the library and not worry about what they might pull off on the shelf. You're like, oh, that's irresponsible, Joseph. That's not parenting. No, I want you to hear me out on this. The library for the kids is a place to discover, explore, and learn on their own. It's a place for them to be free to do those things. As a parent, I should not be concerned about what my kids are pulling off the shelf. I shouldn't have to be looking over my kid's shoulder in the kids section of the library in concern of what they might pull off the shelf. And that's not irresponsible parenting. That is the purpose of the kids section of the library. And so I was a little disappointed to see that the Senate, the reconsideration failed, and that the Senate, that did fail. That was probably one of the few bills that did die that I was like, oh, that was one that I was interested in seeing happen. A lot of these other ones, we can have a lot of conversations about, increased protections for eminent domain. My opinion on this is I want to roll back to just what the original intent of the Constitution was on a lot of this stuff and just stop messing with a lot of these things. And not to say that some of these bills are not good. By the way, the corner crossing clarification, that was an interesting bill. It really, really was. And of course, it died in the Senate. It failed the committee of the whole, 4-27. But a lot of these were interesting bills, and they did make it. And part of me is mixed on that. On most of these, I'm like, fine. It's more bureaucracy. It's more appropriations. It's just a Band-Aid. It doesn't actually fix anything. It invades personal rights in some way, and so on. So we could talk about a lot of those bills that died. There were some bills that died, related to elections, and I'll pull those up. Most of these, folks, I think we need to balance. I think we need to balance what is needed. There was a hand count bill too, I think, that did pass. Let me take a look here. Like random hand counts. The voter registration. Oh, maybe the random hand counts actually didn't pass. I actually thought there was a hand count bill that did pass. Being a midterm election year, it may have been kind of difficult to get some of that stuff done. There was one election bill that I was completely appalled by, and it really, for me, it was about party power, and that was trying to make it almost 3 times harder for independents to run in elections. Right now, they have to get 2% signatures, and they would have had to have gotten 5% signatures, and that is a bill that's being pressed very, very hard by conservatives. And to me, that's just the wrong way to go. That doesn't return elections to the people. It further increases party power and position. And there's just no reason to do something like that. So let's just scroll down this real quick here. I'm going to maybe, since we talked about bills that pass, maybe I'll go ahead and type in failed here. That way we can kind of look at some of the other things. Failed. SNAP benefits waiver. I think this was this failed by a very small margin. I was actually kind of hoping this one would pass, and that's just getting all this junk food off of SNAP benefits, government welfare. And again, I am for getting to a place where there is no welfare. I agree with my party's platform, the Constitution Party, and many of you guys have seen that announcement. I don't want to be paying for people's candy and people's sugary drinks and stuff. But the problem with this bill was it sort of lumped other things into the categories, like, things you might need for baking, like things like sugar, spices, things like that. So why not? What I didn't understand about this bill is, why didn't you guys take care of those problem items so that you could get rid of the junk food? I don't know why they didn't do that. I would have liked to have seen that. Some Clean Air Act bills regarding geoengineering. They didn't make it. By the way, for those that don't know, in order for a bill to make it through in the budget session, they would have had to have gotten a 2/3 vote for it to be considered. And a lot of these bills just didn't get that 2/3 vote to make those things happen. Ivermectin, no. Prescription required, again, just didn't get that 2/3 vote. A lot of these were, for me, when it comes to healthcare, I'm like, why do we have to get permission from legislature to do this stuff? I think doctors should make these decisions. I think we ought to put, fill the board with medical professionals and let them make these decisions. Then we don't have to have legislature do that. So there's a bunch of stuff, that obviously failed and died during this session. There were things like fake meat ban in Wyoming. I mean, that's not even the role of government. It goes back to that role of government thing. And it looks like I'm going to go a little long on the show today just to kind of go through some of this stuff. But I was like, why are you banning fake meat? Like, let the free market. Why? But this is a symbol of a bigger problem in government, you guys, because that bill was actually presented by some of the most conservative folks in our legislature, and they're failing to ask the question: is this the role of government? Just let the free market decide. Guess what? If people want to make the decision to buy fake meat on the shelf, let them make that decision. Let the free market decide. And yet, the most conservative members of our legislature want to ban fake meat. Now, I understand the premise of the idea, but then what? I thought we were free market. But that's a symbol of a much bigger problem in government. Is this idea, this distortion, this destruction of free market principles. And so I'm glad that bill failed. And I think it speaks to a bigger issue. There are a lot of other things to look at. I mean, there was pen and paper ballots in here, and a lot of these failed. And by the way, you guys, we're going to see a lot of this again next year. I mean, some of these bills came from last year. They came in this year, and I guarantee you the interim committees will be trying to pass some of these things again. And I'm not going to give my opinion on each of these things because I think it would just take days and days and days. The show's already going a little long. There was some school discipline bills. There was a lot of election and property tax related bills that failed. It goes on and on. Again, a lot of these, like 38 to 23, a lot of these would have passed in a normal session through the House and continued through the Senate if we didn't have the 2/3 requirement. But as you can imagine, if we did that, we would never be out of the session. It would never be out of the session to get the budget done. Now, there were a couple of bills. These bills here, there were two bills to stop public funds to lobbyists and associations. Both failed, by the way, and by 27 to 34. I will tell you this. The 34 people that voted to shoot these bills down for public funding of lobbyists, those are the ones that we need to focus on replacing. The 27 people in favor of this, those are the folks we want to keep. So House Bill 88, conservatives, you want to keep the 27 people that voted in favor of getting rid of public funds for lobbying. Those are the 27 people that we want to keep in the House. Everybody else, those are the people we want to replace. And there's two bills that failed. Now, obviously, the first layer of that, who voted for and against the heartbeat bill, right? That's a gimme. But this one is another indicator. So that, look at that bill. That's your list of folks that we really need to replace. They're not the true conservatives that want to get your dollars away from lobbying. And you know what? The show has gone kind of long today. I could keep going and going and going and going. There were some Second Amendment bills that didn't pass. My opinion on the Second Amendment, you guys could go back and look at that. Roll back to the Second Amendment. Stop messing with it. We continue to legislate the Second Amendment to death. What we really need to do is just shred it all and say Wyoming recognizes the benefits and the consequences of being a Second Amendment state, and leave it at that and stop complicating the issue. That's for another show. I don't think I've actually done a Second Amendment show. Maybe I should do that. With that, you guys, and again, look, I can keep scrolling, and these are all the bills that failed, you guys, that died, right? There are hundreds of them. So, mixed bag in here on the things that need to be done here. Convention of the States, that's a hot topic. I'm still learning more about this issue. And so I'm still learning on this issue. This is one of those issues where it wasn't a hill I was willing to die on. I've always measured it as this. We can either continue to have an out-of-control federal government and Congress, or we risk an out-of-control Convention of the States, which there's mixed truth, by the way, you guys, on both sides of that argument, depending on how you look at it. And so I think it is an interesting issue to see how it may continue in the future. With that, I got to wrap this show up because I got to get going. It's already gone. I guess I've gone a little long today. I've gone a little 5 minutes over or so. What's coming up the rest of the week? You guys, tomorrow through Friday, you want to learn about the Wyoming Constitution Party. I am going to be talking for the next 3 days about all of the things that brought me to and that the Wyoming Constitution Party believes. The principles, simple government, methods, uh, moral high ground, constitutional limits, all of those things. We're going to do that together for the next 3 days so that you guys can really learn about what we're doing. So with that, we're going to let this show up. And I was going to, I was thinking about the stop sharing my screen too. Let's go. Stop sharing. Okay. I was thinking about what song to play to close us out today. And I like this song we made for the show. It's called Mend the Fences. It's kind of a nice thing. You know what? Go out today and mend some fences. Talk to that person that maybe you've hurt or that you've been hurt by. Do something good for someone else. Make a difference. Be something different right here. Whoops. Let me move that mic. Be something different. Be something different today, you guys. With that, I'm going to go get changed and I'm going to get off to work. I've got some yards to clean today and we've got a couple of maintenance jobs to do and some bathroom work and remodels, stuff like that. So that's what I'm off to doing today. God bless you guys. Go mend some fences. Take care. Bye now.
Granddad bowed his head in silence, calloused hands. The prayer was short. Thank you for this pot of beans and the neighbors down the road. He traded the last jar in the cellar for a stranger's broken day. Didn't ask who they were voting for, just helped hitch up their hay. They didn't have to be right, they just did what was right. Saddled up and rode together through the hard pan, through the firelight. When a storm hit one old farmhouse, every hand in town was there. They believed in rest and repair, mended fences 'cause they cared. Grandma said 2 extra places at some point. We're all in need. Shared the gossip with a chuckle, but she'd show up when you'd bleed. When a barn burned down at midnight, you could see the land glow. Men and women side by side in their Sunday work clothes. They didn't have to be right, they just did what was right. Saddled up and rode together through the hard pan, through the firelight. When a storm hit one old farmhouse, every hand in town was there. They believed in rest and repair, mended fences 'cause they cared. Now we're screaming from our corners on a glowing little screen, throwing stones at second cousins over things we've never seen. But I remember muddy boots stacked beside that Bible chair. The grit, the cold, the quiet nod. Come on in, we'll meet you there. They didn't have to be right, they just did what was right. Saddled up and rode together through the hard pan, through the firelight. When a storm hit one old farmhouse, every hand in town was there. They believed in rest and repair, mended fences 'cause they cared.